It all started with a simple decision. A decision that in hindsight I can confidently say I'll never regret. My name is Greg Mason, and I've been a proud member of my community in Golden Acres for over 10 years. The neighborhood is peaceful, just rows of suburban homes with nice lawns and clean driveways. The kind of place where everyone waves hello, keeps their lawns neat, and where the most exciting event of the year is the annual block party. I don't mind the quiet. In fact, I prefer it. I've never been one to stir the pot. But as fate would have it, I got a little too excited about a patriotic holiday one year. It was the 4th of July. I just finished setting up the grill in the backyard, burgers and dogs ready to go. As I stood on the porch, staring out over the neighborhood, I had a thought. Why not show some pride? Now, I'm not exactly the flag-waving type, but I figured, hey, it's the 4th of July. I can show some patriotism. So I bought a flag, a good solid American flag about 6 foot x 4T. I hung it proudly on the front of my house. It flapped in the wind, bright and beautiful, catching the sun just right. At first, everything was fine. I heard a couple of compliments from the neighbors. A nice flag, Greg here. Oh, that's great, Greg. Really stands out there. I felt a swell of pride. It was a simple flag, nothing flashy, just an expression of patriotism on the biggest holiday of the year. But then a few days passed and I started hearing whispers. Not the kind of whispers you get when someone compliments your grill skills or the color of your house, but the kind that made you feel like maybe someone was conspiring against you. I brushed it off, at first, thinking it's probably nothing. Then came the letter. It was a Thursday evening when the certified letter arrived. I remember it because I was just about to sit down with a cold beer and watch the game. I tore open the envelope without much thought, expecting maybe an invitation to some HOA meeting or a notice about a neighborhood cleanup, but instead I found a violation. Notice, the letter was from the Homeowners Association, more specifically from Linda Cartwright, the self-appointed queen of Golden Acres HOA. Her smile was as bright as her white teeth, and her power trips were as transparent as the cookie-cutter homes we lived in. Dear Mr. Mason, it has come to the attention of the Golden Acres Homeowners Association that the flag displayed on your property does not comply with the neighborhood's aesthetic standards. Specifically, it violates Section 4.2 of the Golden Acres Community Guidelines, which states that exterior decorations must adhere to uniform standards of size and style. We request that you immediately remove this flag from your property to avoid further action. Thank you for your cooperation. Best regards, Linda Cartwright, HOA President. I sat there in stunned silence. I stared at the letter, rereading it a couple of times to make sure it was real. The first thing that struck me was the absurdity. I wasn't flying a flag for any reason other than to celebrate our country. Yet here I was being told to take it down because it didn't fit in. I couldn't help it. I started laughing. But there was something else behind that laugh. Anger, frustration, the sense that I was being pushed around just like everyone else who dared to step outside the rigid lines of conformity in this perfect neighborhood. The next day, I went over the HOA guidelines. I had to. I needed to understand what exactly they were talking about. I read through the rules, page by page, looking for any clause that could possibly explain why my flag was a violation. And then I found it. Section 4.2.2 Exterior Decorations. The section was vague at best, with language that could apply to almost anything from Christmas lights to garden gnomes. It mentioned size, restrictions, colors, and placement. Basically, anything that could be seen from the street, but there was nothing specific about flags. Nothing at all. I took a deep breath and made a decision. Right then, if they wanted to play this game, I was going to make it impossible for them to win. I wasn't going to take the flag down. I was going to upsize it. I started researching flags, big flags. I scoured the internet, found a few flag manufacturers who specialized in massive, oversized flags, and soon I had the perfect idea in mind. I wasn't just going to fly a flag. I was going to fly the world's biggest American flag that could fit in my front yard. The process was surprisingly easy. The company I found custom-made flags for all kinds of uses, military, corporate, and yes, even really big ones. I ordered it 100-foot x 50 feet of pure American glory. It was going to be massive, practically a mini version of a football field, enough to make a statement that nobody could ignore. The flag arrived 2 weeks later. It was enormous, packed tightly in a shipping crate. I stood in awe as I pulled it out. Its weight heavy and symbolically powerful. This wasn't just a flag. It was a declaration. I spent the next few days getting everything ready. I recruited a few buddies to help with the installation. The plan was simple. Run a sturdy steel pole up from the ground, have a winch system for easy raising and lowering, and most importantly, make it visible from every inch of the neighborhood. I wasn't just putting this up for my neighbors to admire. I was putting it up to make a point. On the day of installation, I was filled with a sense of excitement and defiance. As we raised that 100-foot flag pole, the entire block seemed to notice. The wind caught the flag and it rippled majestically across my front yard. It was larger than life. It was bold. It was a statement. By the time the flag was fully unfurled, I felt a sense of victory. I could already picture Linda Cartwright's reaction. She'd be livid, and I couldn't wait to see it. Sure enough, later that afternoon, she showed up. She didn't knock. She didn't even walk up to my door. She just stood at the end of my driveway. Her jaw dropped, staring at the giant flag, waving proudly in the breeze. She marched up, clipboard in hand, looking like she was ready to explode. "Mr. Mason," she said, through clenched teeth, "I demand you take that flag down immediately." I crossed my arms and grinned. "You didn't specify size in your guidelines, Linda. So technically this is within the rules." She stared at the flag, visibly trying to hold herself together. "You can't get away with this," she snapped, her voice shaking. I smiled again, more smugly this time. "We'll see," I said. "You know, Linda, it's funny. I thought about your request all night, and I decided if I'm going to fly a flag, I'm going to make it one that really gets noticed. You weren't using your authority anyway, so I decided to put it to good use." I turned and walked back inside. The flag waved proudly behind me, and I felt like I'd just won the first battle. The next few days were nothing short of hilarious. I kept the flag up, of course. What else could I do? It was a point of pride, literally and figuratively. The sight of it flapping in the wind was like a middle finger to the HOA, and the way it towered over the neighborhood made it impossible to ignore. I could already imagine the scene at the next HOA meeting. Sure enough, the complaints started pouring in. First, it was Linda. Then it was the neighbors who thought I was upsetting the peaceful aesthetic of the neighborhood. But they all had one thing in common. They were furious. Linda showed up on my porch a second time, wearing that same suit and that same stiff expression. Only this time she didn't even have to knock. She just walked right up to my door. "You need to take that flag down, Mr. Mason," she demanded, her voice dripping with authority. "This is a violation of the community's values, and it's absolutely unacceptable." I looked over at the flag, which was now the proud centerpiece of my front yard, waving gloriously in the wind, towering over everything else. "You know, Linda," I said, trying to keep my tone light, but my smile wide. "It's funny. You keep asking me to take this down, but you never actually gave me any reason that I can't fly it. It's still just a flag. You know, just because it's a bit bigger than usual doesn't mean it breaks any laws. She stared at me, fists clenched at her sides, clearly having trouble finding words. I'll get the city involved, she said, her voice a low growl. You'll be fine for this city? I raised an eyebrow. I already checked. Linda, the city doesn't have any restrictions on flag sizes. In fact, the Freedom to Display the American Flag Act of 2005 guarantees my right to fly the flag on my property. You might want to brush up on that before you go knocking on doors. She opened her mouth, then closed it. I could see her trying to put together some legal rebuttal, but honestly, I think the frustration of her defeat was making her choke on her words. Fine, she spat, but don't think this is over. As she stormed off, I couldn't help but laugh. This was getting fun. I went inside and fired up the grill for a barbecue. The smell of burgers filled the air, and I invited a few neighbors to join me. The reactions were mixed. Some were still too intimidated to even look at the flag directly, but others were starting to warm up to the idea. One neighbor, Greg from down the street, came over and asked if I could help him build a smaller flagpole for his house. What do you think of that flag, Greg? I asked, flipping a burger. He grinned. I think it's about time someone stood up to those people. By now, the flag had become a landmark, a beacon of resistance. It wasn't just a flag. It was a symbol of defiance against the overreach of the HOA, and people were starting to take notice. One afternoon, I came home to find a couple of people taking pictures of it. Apparently, it had become a tourist attraction of sorts. Things were looking good. But then, Linda took it to the next level. I got an official notice from the HOA, followed by a legal letter. This time, they were threatening an actual lawsuit claiming my flag was a public disturbance and creating an unsafe visual obstruction. A lawsuit. I couldn't believe it. I took the documents to my lawyer, an old buddy from college named Jake, who used to have a rebellious streak. When I showed him the papers, he laughed so hard he nearly fell out of his chair. This is gold, Jake said. They're suing you because you have too much American pride. All right, let's show them what a real public disturbance looks like. We filed a countersuit, not just for the flag, but for harassment and emotional distress. The countersuit caught the attention of the local media, and soon, the story was everywhere. Suburban man fights HOA over flag and wins became a headline. Local reporters came by to interview me. The whole thing turned into a viral sensation. I was getting messages of support from people across the country. Some people even started sending me flag-themed gifts. Everything from small pins to massive banners. Then came the best part. The HOA's case fell apart. In court, Linda tried to argue that my flag was causing a psychological burden on the neighborhood. I swear I saw the judge try to suppress a laugh. The entire courtroom was in disbelief. She couldn't cite a single legitimate law that said I couldn't display my flag. And when the lawyer for the HOA tried to pull out the argument that it violated the aesthetic integrity of the neighborhood, Jake hit back with the peace to resistance, the Freedom to Display the American Flag Act of 2005. The judge ruled in my favor. The flag stayed. The best part, the judge also added a personal note in the ruling, stating that patriotism should never be an inconvenience. The HOA was ordered to pay my legal fees and issued a public apology. I went home that day, the taste of victory sweet on my tongue and the flag still flying high. But the story didn't end there. Linda was gone, resigned in disgrace. The HOA, crippled by their own legal loss and public humiliation, dissolved entirely within the next 6 months. The community started to vote on new leadership, and a lot of the old regulations were rewritten to be more inclusive and community-friendly. People started standing up for themselves. The neighborhood, which had once been dominated by the silent rule of the HOA, became a place of more personal freedom. As for me, well, I still fly my flag. It's bigger than ever now. And every time someone drives by and waves at it, I can't help but smile. I've learned that sometimes you don't need to fight with fists or words. Sometimes you just need to raise a flag, one that's bigger than all the small. Mine's trying to tell you how to live. And that, my friends, is the kind of victory that lasts.